In 2011, one company made the best smartphone on the planet. Not Samsung, not Apple, not Google. It is HTC. The HTC One X was the phone reviewers couldn't stop talking about. Faster than the iPhone 4S, better camera, a screen that made everything else look outdated. Tech journalists were calling it the device that finally proved Android could beat Apple at its own game. The company had just posted its highest ever quarterly revenue. Its stock was trading at an all-time high. It had more than 60% of the high-end Android market in the United States. 2 years later, it was posting losses. 3 years later, it was essentially invisible. By 2017, Google bought the majority of HTC's phone division for just over $1 billion, which sounds like a lot until you realize HTC had been valued at over $30 billion at its peak. The company that beat Apple had somehow become worth less than 3% of what it was worth when it was winning. So how does the best smartphone maker in the world disappear in under 5 years? Buried inside HTC's boardroom decisions from 2011 and 2012 is a pattern that almost every tech analyst who studied the company missed at the time. Not one catastrophic mistake, not a product failure, not a scandal. A series of decisions that each seemed reasonable in isolation, and together were fatal. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what those decisions were. And once you do, you'll recognize the same pattern happening right now in industries you interact with every day. But first, you need to understand what HTC actually built. Because calling it an Android phone company massively undersells what this company was. HTC, the high-tech computer corporation, was founded in Taiwan in 1997 by Chair Wang and Peter Chu. Its first products were not smartphones. They were laptops for other companies. Contract manufacturing. The kind of work that pays reliably but builds no brand recognition whatsoever. Nobody knew the name HTC. Nobody was supposed to. That changed in 2002 when HTC pivoted to smartphones before the word smartphone was even in common use. They built some of the first Windows mobile devices. Then, in 2007, something happened that would change the trajectory of the entire mobile industry and put HTC at the center of it. Google came knocking. When Google was developing Android, they needed a hardware partner to build the first devices. They chose HTC. The very first Android phone, the HTC Dream, sold as the T-Mobile G1 in the United States, was an HTC device. Before Samsung Android was a thing, before the Galaxy S existed, before anyone outside Google had heard of Android, HTC was already building it. Think about what that means. HTC had a head start of years on every other Android manufacturer on the planet. It understood the software better than any competitor. It had direct relationships with Google engineers. It was, in every meaningful sense, Android's original hardware home. And it used that advantage brilliantly. Through 2008, 2009, 2010, and into 2011, HTC kept releasing devices that pushed the Android platform forward. The HTC Desire, the HTC Sensation, the HTC One series. These weren't cheap imitations of Apple products. They were genuinely innovative machines that repeatedly showed what Android could do when the hardware was built by people who understood the platform from the inside. By 2011, HTC had become so dominant in the high-end Android space that Samsung, which is now synonymous with Android, was actually considered the lower-end player. HTC was the premium brand. HTC was the aspirational choice. If you wanted the best Android phone, you bought HTC, and then the wheels started to come off. Not loudly, not dramatically. Quietly, in ways that weren't obvious until the damage was already done. Here's the first thing that went wrong, and it's more interesting than it sounds. HTC released too many phones, not a few too many. Way too many. In 2011 alone, HTC released over 20 different smartphone models. 20? At different price points, different sizes, different specs, different carrier exclusives for different operators in different markets. The idea was to cover every segment simultaneously: budget, mid-range, premium, phablet, compact. Flood the market and capture everything. What actually happened was the opposite. When you spread engineering, marketing, and manufacturing resources across 20 products simultaneously, none of them get the attention they deserve. Software updates got delayed because the team was too thinly spread to push updates to 20 different devices simultaneously. Quality control started slipping because manufacturing processes couldn't be optimized for one flagship when they had to cover a whole portfolio. And perhaps most critically, consumers got confused. If someone asked a friend, "Should I get HTC?" the answer couldn't be simple because which HTC? The budget one? The big one? The one exclusive to this carrier? Samsung was doing something similar, but Samsung had the scale to absorb it. HTC didn't. Before I continue, if you want to understand how dominant companies talk themselves into their own destruction, subscribe to Behind the Tech right now. Every single week we break down the hidden decisions behind the world's biggest tech collapses. Haven't said that, let's dive back in. Here's the second thing that went wrong. And this one is where it really gets interesting. HTC's leadership made a decision in 2012 that the company needed to invest heavily in marketing. They were right. HTC had a genuine brand problem. Despite making better phones than Samsung by most technical measures, Samsung was the name everyone knew. Samsung had massive marketing budgets and was spending them everywhere. HTC looked invisible by comparison. So HTC hired Robert Downey Jr. for a major global advertising campaign. They spent hundreds of millions on marketing. They tried to build the kind of brand recognition that Samsung had. But here's what they didn't do. They didn't simplify the product line first. Samsung's marketing worked because when you saw a Samsung ad, you knew what phone it was talking about. The Galaxy S, one product, one name, one identity. When HTC's ads ran, they were promoting a brand that still had 20 different phones attached to it. The marketing spend couldn't fix the portfolio problem because you can't advertise your way out of consumer confusion. You can only intensify it. The hundreds of millions spent on marketing came directly out of the budget that should have been going into R&D. And in a hardware business where the product you ship next year depends entirely on the engineering you fund this year, cutting R&D to fund marketing is essentially borrowing from your future to pay for your present. By 2013, it was showing. The HTC One M7, which was genuinely one of the most beautiful phones ever made, an aluminum unibody design that Apple later basically copied, couldn't be manufactured fast enough. Supply chain problems meant HTC couldn't meet demand. While customers waited for HTC phones, Samsung shipped. And once a customer buys a Samsung phone, the ecosystem pull kicks in. Their contacts sync to Samsung. Their photos back up through Samsung. Their apps are arranged and familiar. Switching back becomes friction. Here's the part of this story that almost nobody talks about, and it's the part that actually sealed HTC's fate. HTC owned Beats Electronics. You know Beats, the headphone company with the red B logo that Apple later bought for $3 billion. HTC had acquired a majority stake in Beats in 2011 for $300 million. That was a genuinely smart move. Beats was one of the hottest consumer electronics brands in the world. The synergies were obvious. HTC could bundle Beats audio into its phones. It gave HTC something Samsung didn't have: a premium audio brand that resonated with mainstream consumers, not just tech enthusiasts. Then HTC sold its stake back to Beats in 2012 for less than it paid, just before Apple acquired the company and made it worth $3 billion. Think about what that means in concrete terms. HTC had a $3 billion asset on its books. It sold it for a loss. Then Apple bought it, integrated it into every iPhone, and used it as one more reason to choose Apple over Android. HTC funded its own competitive disadvantage. That's not bad luck. That's a strategic decision that is very hard to explain rationally in retrospect. The cash from the Beats sale went into the marketing campaign. The marketing campaign didn't fix the product problem. The product problem got worse because R&D was underfunded. And all of this was happening while Samsung was spending $7 billion a year on marketing and investing billions more in manufacturing capacity that made supply chain problems structurally impossible. HTC was fighting a war of attrition against an opponent with 10 times the resources and no intention of stopping. By 2015, the results were impossible to ignore. HTC's market share in smartphones had fallen from over 10% globally to under 2%. Its revenue had declined by more than 60% from its 2011 peak. It was losing money consistently. The company that had been the best Android phone maker on Earth had become a cautionary tale studied in business schools. And here's the lesson that HTC's story actually teaches you, and it's more uncomfortable than most people want to hear. HTC didn't lose because it made bad products. The HTC One M7, the One M8, even the One M9, these were excellent phones. They consistently ranked among the best Android devices in head-to-head reviews, right up until the point HTC essentially withdrew from the market. The hardware team never stopped being talented. HTC lost because of decisions made in boardrooms, not engineering labs. Too many products when it needed one great one. Marketing spend when it needed R&D. Selling a premium asset at the wrong moment to fund a strategy that didn't work. And crucially, an inability to recognize that in a market where Samsung had structural advantages of scale, HTC's only viable long-term strategy was to do fewer things better, to become the Apple of Android, rather than trying to out-Samsung, the company that built the first Android phone. The company that was making better smartphones than Apple when Apple was at the peak of its cultural dominance. It couldn't survive its own strategic decisions. Right now, somewhere in a tech company you use every day, there's a leadership team making decisions that look reasonable individually and are quietly catastrophic collectively. The product is still good, the engineers are still talented, and the choices being made in the boardroom are already writing the ending. That pattern didn't start with HTC. Click on this video right here, How BlackBerry Conquered the World and Then Destroyed Itself, and you'll see the same structure play out a decade earlier in a company that was even more dominant. I'll see you there.